I'm Andy Agafangelo, the founder of the Transparency Task Force. We are a large and international organization that is dedicated to helping to reform the financial services sector. Our mission is to promote ongoing reform of the sector so that it serves society better. We have many projects on the go at the moment. The most exciting one is in relation to Violation Tracker, a wonderful US-based database that we stumbled across when we were doing some research for our book. And having learned a bit about Violation Tracker, the more we learned, the more we liked. We reached out to the people that run Violation Tracker, and we've had numerous extremely positive conversations about an idea, which is to make sure that Violation Tracker is not just available to the people in the US, but is also available to people in the UK too. And with that in mind, what we've organized today is a short video demonstration of the people behind Violation Tracker, what it is, what it does, and why the UK desperately needs it. So with that in mind, I'm now going to be passing over to the founder and executive director of Good Jobs First, Greg Leroy. Greg, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and so excited to get to know more people in the UK and talk about Violation Tracker being replicated there. So Good Jobs First is a nonprofit organization based in Washington, DC. We're 22 years old. We focus on both corporate and government accountability in economic development and in corporate accountability generally. And our most heavily trafficked tool is the Violation Tracker, which we launched 5 years ago this month in the fall of 2015. The database began mostly as a compilation of environmental and occupational safety and health records, about 100,000 of them, but it's much bigger than that now, spanning more than 250 different federal and state sources. It has a very large global user base. In fact, the traffic volumes have ballooned to the point where it's now experiencing more than 2 million page views per month. To the extent we can identify the users, they are literally all over the map. That is, both geographically and ideologically. They are journalists and academics and NGOs and labor unions and environmentalists and corporations of many different stripes, manufacturers, banks, law firms, accountancy firms, environmental, social governance or ESG-oriented investment advisors, reputation defense firms, location consulting firms, banks and insurance companies. Obviously, many of the companies that are the targets of the data collections themselves, comparing notes to each other, using it as a vetting tool, using it, frankly, as a reputation defense tool, we think. More than 150 academics around the world are using this data under pursuant to non-commercial use agreements that we've signed with them, not just in America, but in 13 other countries, including Hong Kong and the UK, Netherlands, Germany, Australia, Canada, Austria, South Korea, and France. Finally, Violation Tracker is now cross-linked to a new database we've created recently to cover the American law passed to help stimulate the economy because of the pandemic-induced recession. It's called COVID Stimulus Watch, and in that we actually link the track records, the regulatory track records of companies that are getting the new federal aid under the COVID CARES Act here in the States to their regulatory histories. So without any further ado, let me introduce the mastermind of Violation Tracker, our research director, Phil Matera.
Thanks, Greg. So I'm going to give a quick overview of what's in the US Violation Tracker. And in this database, we're doing basically three things. We're collecting data on resolved cases from a wide variety of agencies and assembling it all in one place so that it can be searched at once. We're linking these individual, the companies named in these individual cases to their parent companies. And then we aggregate the information so that you can see the violations that have occurred throughout a large company's various operations across its units, divisions, and subsidiaries. We also tag all the individual entries, according to the nature of the offense. We have both narrow types of offenses and broad types of offenses so that you can search for the information that's most relevant to your needs. So I'm going to going to share my screen out so that you can see what the violation tracker homepage looks like. And I hope that that's visible to everybody. So this is what you see when you go to violationtracker.org. And we make the data available in through two different approaches. The first one is through a series of summary pages in which you can choose first if you're interested in a particular parent company, you can go down this very long list. It's more than 3,000 companies for which we've aggregated information, and you can choose which one is of interest to you. And our parent companies, by the way, are both US-based companies and foreign-based companies. So here we have HSBC, because they do have US operations and they've been caught up in different regulatory and legal matters in the US. We have quite a bit of information on that bank. You know, we've got 59 different records. So some of this may be difficult for you to read on the screen. I can make it a little bit larger, see if that helps. So we've got 59 different records here for HSBC. We have these broad categories that I mentioned before, including financial offenses, competition-related offenses, et cetera. We give you the totals there, the dollar totals, and the number of records. Then we give you the breakdown in more specific, more narrow offense types. So we've got kind of 9 broad categories and about 80 different more specific categories. And then if you scroll down more, you'll see all of the individual entries that we've assembled to come up with these totals. You know, so in the case here, we have more than $6.5 billion in penalties, and penalties include both fines and legal settlements. And each of these here are links back to an individual page where we give the detail on this particular matter. So if we choose one of these here, if you scroll down, it gives you a description of the case. It tells you where the case was brought, other relevant detail, and most importantly, a link back to the original data source, which here is a press release from the US Justice Department explaining the resolution of that case. So all of our entries are sourced back to an official document, either an individual document of that sort, or to an agency report, or sometimes a larger agency database. If we go back to the homepage, we have similar summary pages by industry. You could pick which industry you might be interested in for those various offense groups, both the broad and the narrow ones. We have summary pages for all the individual agencies, both federal and the state and the local ones, and summary pages for the different countries or US states where the parent company is headquartered. In addition to these summary pages, if you scroll down to what we call our option 2, you can basically do a custom, create a custom search using a variety of variables, including the company name, but you could even do it without the company name. And you can combine it with information of various kinds to zero in on the search you want. For example, you can distinguish between what we call agency actions, which are cases brought by regulatory agencies or our Justice Department, as opposed to private litigation. And we're still building this part of the website. These are what we call class action lawsuits, where groups of individuals go to court against a company for some misconduct that affects large numbers of people, and we treat those settlements as a form of penalty. You can do a search by the penalty amount. So for example, if you wanted to show all of the penalties that are $1 billion or more, you can do that, and you'll see we've got 90 results. BP at the top. This was the large settlement involving their disaster in the Gulf of Mexico back in 2015, and many more. And you can, you could limit it by agency, you can limit it by year, you can limit it by presidential administration, and various other things. For certain agencies, we're able to obtain information on not just on the company, the overall company, but on individual facilities, so that we're able to capture the address information and other specific information about that facility. And we make it possible for you to choose, for example, a particular state, and to show information on cases involving a particular city. You could show all the ones in that state or all the ones in a particular city. So, so as you can see, we've got a very robust search feature here on the website. We also give you a list here under agency data sources. You can see all the various agencies that we gather the information from, both at the federal level. We have basically every federal regulatory agency, and increasingly we're filling in the state and the local data. We have a very extensive user guide that goes through all the different data elements. And we have an update log, so that you can keep track of, see when we last updated the website and what we added to it, and any new features that we added at that time. So this is a quick look at what the U.S. violation tracker looks like. It's it's our understanding that the UK version of this, once it's created, will have a number of similarities, but there may also be unique features that would be appropriate for the UK data. And speaking of the UK data, I'll now turn things over to Anish Raghunandan, who's on the faculty at London School of Economics and who's done a lot of work with this kind of data, and has begun the process of collecting the UK data. So Anish.
Thanks, Phil. And just to kind of reintroduce myself, my name is Anish Raghunandan. I am an assistant professor in the accounting department at the LSE. And I've been working extensively with Good Jobs First and with their data for the last 5 years since I was in grad school. And so as part of this, I've been a heavy user of Violation Tracker US, and I've got some work on wage theft, on how non-financial misconduct relates to financial misconduct. And one thing that I thought was kind of an obvious extension was to figure out how companies misbehave across borders. And so to try to do that, we thought it would be good to build out Violation Tracker for other countries. And I thought maybe the UK would be a good start because I live and work here. And so as Phil alluded to, I've done some work along with a couple of LSE graduate students over the summer in building out kind of the data that would underline version 1 of Violation Tracker UK. And as Phil alluded to, this will be as similar to Violation Tracker US as can be in terms of the types of data we collect, the scope of coverage, the types of violations, the types of underlying misconduct, but it will be tailored to the UK setting somewhat. And I thought I would kind of share my screen just to give you a sense of what we have and where we're going in the short term, and then where we also hope to go in the longer term as well. And so we've been collecting what you might think of as the UK analogs to a number of large US federal agencies. So for example, we've already got and could make available in spreadsheet form pretty comprehensive data on environmental malfeasance in the UK. Or similarly, we've collected data on wage theft in the UK. These are kind of observations published by HMRC about 4 times a year in kind of list format. And as you can see, we've got 14 agencies of data so far fully included, right? So if the data exists on the website, if the data exists in public form, we have it for these 14 agencies. And you can see over here the number of cases. And you'll notice that some agencies have a lot of cases, some agencies not so many. This is more, this reflects more the enforcement philosophy of these agencies, where some agencies rely on kind of this high fine, low frequency approach, as is the case, for example, for most forms of financial enforcement. Other agencies rely on this kind of high frequency, low fine approach, as you'll notice for example, the Health and Safety Executive, which deals with workplace safety in the UK. But in any case, no matter what the enforcement philosophy, we have the data. We've got about 17,000 cases so far, and those are just cases in which we could identify a monetary sanction. One feature of the UK that is distinct from the US and that we have begun to capture is the use of zero monetary penalty sanctions and the UK government's reliance on these. So you'll notice that in many cases, the Environment Agency, the Health and Safety Executive, and many other agencies as well that we just haven't had a chance to collect, issue what are called warnings or cautions or enforcement notices that serve as kind of first notice that something is wrong. And in many cases, these are extremely useful. And these aren't a thing that exists in the US for the most part, but these are useful because they can help you almost predict when a violation might later occur, right? So these are typically not super serious offenses, but they help you understand when companies are going down the path to recidivism. And I bring this up to highlight the fact that this is unique to the UK, at least relative to the US, and we have this data. And similarly, the next big thing we're collecting moving forward is data from the Employment Tribunal. So again, this is maybe something where that'll be more helpful for our US viewers. In the US, resolving employment disputes typically goes through one of 3 routes. The first is you can file a complaint with the relevant regulator. That could be the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, could be the Wage and Hour Division, could be someone else. The second is you get enough people to agree that they've been wronged and you take it to court, right? That's typically called a class action. The third and most common, unfortunately, is one that's called arbitration, where when you signed your contract to work for the company, you agreed that if there were any disputes, you would go to a private mediator. Now, the problem with arbitration is that we on the outside have no idea who's been to arbitration and for how much. Arbitration settlements are confidential. The nice thing about the UK is that arbitration historically hasn't been such a big deal. And instead, we have something called the Employment Tribunal. And I'd like to highlight this because this is the most comprehensive source of data on which workers and which companies seem to be causing harm to their workers. So for example, we can get data on cases of unfair dismissal, workplace discrimination, anything that would fall under any sort of misconduct committed by employers towards their employees, we can get data on. And we have that in the UK, and that is publicly available. And so our next step is to kind of bring that in and to get a really clear picture of, hey, which companies are treating their employees fairly and which ones aren't. And we've got that data for the past 3 years. And one thing we'd like to actually build out that's going to take a lot of time and effort, and that we hope we can do, is to actually go down to, at some point, Bury St. Edmunds, where older records live in paper form in a court. And so as far as next steps go, we'd like to be able to show you, the end user of Violation Tracker UK, and hopefully not in the too distant future, a really comprehensive picture of who are the good employers, which employers treat their employees fairly, and how might that influence things like ESG investments or who do you work for, right? And so we're hoping that this will kind of be useful to a broad set of stakeholders. And so that's it for me, and I think I'll pass it back to Andy to kind of tie this all together and wrap up, and I ought to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much indeed, Anish. That was a great insight, Anish, Greg, Phil, on the workings of Violation Tracker. I guess it falls upon me just to kind of bring things to a conclusion. We, within the Transparency Task Force, think of Violation Tracker as a transparency machine. We love it. We think it shines a big, bright light on issues that need to be lit up. It helps people to understand what's really happening in the marketplace. It helps to differentiate between those organizations with a very good, clean, regulatory enforcement track record, and unfortunately those that don't have that kind of track record. And we are particularly keen to understand those organizations that, despite the fact that they are caught doing wrong, are fined for doing wrong, carry on doing it. This speaks to some kind of cultural issue within the organization that needs to change. We're all about trying to drive positive, progressive, and purposeful change in the marketplace. And with Violation Tracker, we know that the UK can speed up the rate at which it becomes a bastion of open, clean, competitive, free marketplaces where consumers and corporates alike can all be playing on a fair, level, and clean playing field. So the message is very simple. This is a tool, a utility that's a great public good in the United States. We want it in the UK. That means we need to get support for it. We want financial support. We want operational support. We want all the support we can possibly get, because the more support we have, the quicker it can happen, the quicker it can start delivering benefits. So policymakers, politicians, regulators, pension funds, governance professionals, the long list of people types that Greg spoke about earlier, we're all on the same side. We all want Violation Tracker to happen. We can all make it happen with the correct support and a team approach that's going to be necessary to make this occur. Let's make it happen. Greg, thank you. Anish, thank you. And Phil, thank you very much indeed. That's pretty much our message. The action point is very simple. If you haven't already got our 2-page summary document, reach out for it. If you have, let's fix up a phone call. Let's have a conversation, and let's figure out the best way for you to support this public good that the UK most desperately needs. Thank you very much.